Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Quarter Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and probably are thinking that when I made my short on the videos from Midnight Tales channel I'll be reacting to, I only picked out 5. Well, yeah, that is true. But I saw he uploaded some more recently, so I just picked out this one. And this is actually the next video after the Highway scary story video I just reacted to. Let's put it that way. And this was called 4 Disturbing Real Target Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and then back. All right, everybody, here we go.
So this happened when I was about 13. My mom and I were at Target just doing some regular shopping, nothing special. We weren't in a rush or anything, so I was wandering off into different aisles like I usually did. It was a normal thing. I'd just explore for a bit, look at stuff, and then meet back up with my mom later. No big deal. I was in one of the aisles, just minding my own business, when this woman I had never seen before suddenly walked right up to me and wrapped me in a hug. Not a casual, polite hug, a deep, emotional, almost desperate hug. At first, I wasn't really alarmed. I'm Hispanic, and my extended family is huge, so it's not uncommon for older relatives to greet me with a hug, even if I don't recognize them right away.
I would be thinking that's kind of weird because if I don't know you, why are you hugging me?
I figured she was someone from my family, maybe a distant aunt or a friend of my mom's who hadn't seen me since I was little. But something felt off. She was holding on to me way too long, and I could hear her sniffle like she was crying. That's when she started calling me a name that wasn't mine. I don't remember exactly what it was. Let's just say it was Eliza. Eliza, it's you, baby. I've missed you so much, she whispered. That was the first moment I felt a little jolt of unease. I gently pulled away and told her, as politely as I could, that she had the wrong person. I wasn't Eliza. I had never seen her before. I thought it would just be a funny little misunderstanding, something we'd laugh about before she apologized and went on her way. But then, things took a really dark turn. She just stared at me, her expression shifting into something unsettling. It was like she didn't even hear me. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she reached out to touch my face like she was trying to convince herself that I was real. Then, in the most heartbroken voice I had ever heard, she whispered, "But baby, you died." My stomach dropped. She wasn't just mistaking me for someone else. She truly, completely, wholeheartedly believed that I was her dead daughter. She kept talking, her words tumbling out like she was in shock. "Why did you die, my love? Where have you been? I buried you. I saw you in that car. But you're here now. Thank God you're here now."
Okay, I'll be trying to wave over an employee of the store and be like, this lady thinks I'm their dead child. Can you help me remove them away from me? She's starting to creep me out. She's probably going through a lot of stress of losing a child, and I can understand that. No parent doesn't want to see their kid being buried first before they die. So she's probably going through some sort of mental breakdown. Man, this is sad.
I had no idea what to do. Every logical part of me knew this was just some horrible case of mistaken identity. But the way she was looking at me, it made me doubt myself. For a split second, I actually had this weird thought. What if she's right? What if I'm Eliza? What if I just forgot everything? I told her again that I wasn't Eliza, but she wouldn't accept it. She smiled through her tears, shaking her head like I was just being silly. "Of course it's you. A mother knows her own daughter's face." Now you might be thinking, okay, maybe she was mentally unstable. Maybe she was homeless or under the influence of something. But she wasn't. She was completely put together, well dressed, clean, wearing makeup. carrying a normal shopping basket full of everyday things. She didn't have that disoriented, lost look some people have when they're struggling with mental illness. Everything about her seemed normal, except for the fact that she was completely convinced I was her dead child. The longer she spoke, the more it felt like she was reliving some past trauma in real time. Like she had truly believed her daughter was gone, and now suddenly, against all odds, she was standing in front of her again. The more she talked, the more panicked I got. I felt trapped, like I was losing control of reality. The weight of her words, the intensity of her emotions, I couldn't take it. I muttered some excuse and practically sprinted out of that aisle, weaving through the store until I found my mom. I expected her to brush it off, maybe even laugh a little when I told her. But the second I explained what had just happened, the look on her face terrified me more than the woman did. My mom is not the overly protective, clingy type. She's always given me a lot of independence. But for the rest of our time in that Target, she wouldn't let me out of her sight. She held onto my arm while we walked, kept looking over her shoulder, and even made me stand right next to her while she checked out. She was shaken, and that scared the hell out of me. That moment stuck with me for a long time. For weeks after, I kept waiting for someone else to approach me. A father, a brother, a grandmother, someone else who was part of Eliza's family, someone else who would look at me with that same gut-wrenching recognition. Thankfully, it never happened. But to this day, I still think about that woman.
That is strange. And after the mother made a shocked expression, she knew that that was not no sane person. But I'm glad she did not have a run-in with her mom, because I know the mom would be like fussing her out and be like, "Get away from my daughter. She's not your dead daughter." You know, I know they were glad to get out of that store that day.
When I was around 6 years old, my mom had this weekly routine where she'd take me and my little brother to Target every Wednesday at 11 a.m., right after an appointment she had. It wasn't just any Target either. This was one of those giant super Targets, the kind that had everything from groceries to home goods, and it was in a nice, safe neighborhood.
To be honest with you, I don't think I've never been into a Target, quote unquote, superstore. I know that would have to be nice to go into.
The kind of place where moms shopped with their kids, old couples browsed for random things, and nothing bad ever really seemed to happen. I always loved those Target trips. My brother and I would usually get a small treat, and we'd run around the toy aisle while my mom shopped for whatever we needed that week. It was such a normal part of our lives that I never thought twice about it. Until that one day when I noticed him. The first time I saw the man, he didn't really stand out for any particular reason, at least not in a way I could understand at 6 years old. He looked rough, probably in his 50s, wearing a worn-out Carhartt jacket, jeans with holes and paint stains all over them. He had this weird, toothless grin, the kind that made my stomach feel strange. I was a kid, and kids stare, so I just stood there and stared at him, and he stared back. Then we turned down an aisle, and he was gone. The next week, I didn't see him at all, but the week after that, he was there again, this time just a few aisles away. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe he was just a guy who did his shopping at the same time we did. But every week after that, he kept showing up. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of him near the grocery section, other times by the checkout lanes. Then, one week, I saw him standing in the toy aisle. That's when I started feeling uneasy. I still didn't say anything to my mom, because what would I even say? Hey, I keep seeing this weird guy at Target? That didn't seem like enough of a reason to be concerned.
Believe me, if I was the parent, I'd be like, "What does he look like?" And I'll see if I can like get an employee to get him out of the store, or tell him to not be around my kids. Man, this kid needs to hurry up and do something to get help.
But then one day, things changed. We were shopping like usual when my mom told my brother and me to grab something from the next aisle over. We didn't think twice about it, we just went. But as soon as we turned the corner and were out of her sight, he was there. He walked right up to us and said hi. My little brother grabbed my arm. We had been taught not to talk to strangers, so we didn't say anything. We just took a small step back, hoping he would go away. But he didn't. Instead, he took another step forward and said, "My name's Tom. Do you want to go look at the toys with me?" That's when my brother and I completely lost it. We both burst into tears and ran as fast as we could back to my mom, barely able to get the words out through our sobbing. I don't even remember what I said to her, just that I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. My mom didn't panic, at least not in a way that we could see. She just pulled us in close, whispered for us to stay by her side, and kept shopping. But I could feel that something had shifted in her. She was on edge now. About 10 minutes later, we were in the kids' clothing section. My brother and I were still sniffling, trying to calm down, when I saw him again. He was walking straight toward us. I grabbed my mom's arm and pointed at him. Her eyes flicked over to where he was, and she immediately started moving. She didn't run, didn't yell. She just calmly started walking with us toward the store's security guard, who was standing near the exit. She kept her voice low and steady as she told the guard that a man had been following us around, and had even approached her kids, trying to lure us away. She was still explaining when, like clockwork, Tom walked right up next to us. I swear my heart stopped. He didn't even try to hide what he was doing. He immediately started talking over my mom, loudly, his words slurring together. I couldn't understand anything he was saying, but I remember his voice. It was rough and angry, like he was mad we had said something. Then, out of nowhere, he looked down at me and my brother and said, "What you crying for?" I was already freaked out before, but when he said that, I completely lost it again. My brother and I clung to our mom as we sobbed. The security guard must have seen enough because he stepped in between us and Tom and told him, very firmly, that he needed to leave the store immediately. But Tom didn't leave right away. Instead, he took one step closer, locked eyes with my mom, and started unbuckling his belt. "Chew need this?" he said, grinning. "Chew need this?" I don't even know what he meant by that. I don't want to know what he meant by that. That's when the security guard grabbed him, yanked him backward, and dragged him out of the store. I don't remember much after that. My mom held on to us tight, shaking but trying not to let us see it, and we left the store as fast as we could. We never saw Tom again, but I never forgot him. Even now, I still hate going to that Target.
That was the smartest thing to do, going to a security guard in the store. I don't know why he has to yell at the kids and be like, "What you crying for?" He shouldn't really go up to them and start yelling at them while the security guard's right there looking at him. Yeah, that guy must be really high on some sort of drugs. I'm glad that security guard got him out of there. Hopefully the Target banned him from going to that store. You think you're just going in there to have a peaceful shopping experience, and then you don't know who will be walking in just to scare you to death of going into that place anymore.
Back when I lived in the city, going to Target was pretty much part of my daily routine. Whether I needed something or not, I'd always find an excuse to go browse. On this particular day, I was looking for some pants to wear to a party later that week, so I figured I'd stop by Target and see if they had anything I liked. I walked in like usual, not thinking much of anything, but right as I entered, I noticed this guy walk in right behind me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. People shop at Target all the time, right? But as I wandered through the aisles, looking at different things, I kept noticing that every time I turned around, he was there. Not just once or twice, but over and over again. I'd switch to a different aisle, and there he was. I moved over to another section. Boom. There he was again.
That would be a little suspicious because if he's just walking up right behind you at the same time you walked into the store, yep, he's following you.
At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe we were just on the same shopping path, looking for the same types of things. But then I walked over to the makeup section to grab some new foundation since mine had run out. And when I turned around, there he was again, standing right in front of the NYX display. Except this time, he wasn't even pretending to shop. He had nothing in his hands, wasn't looking at anything. He was just standing there. The way he kept avoiding eye contact every time I looked at him sent chills down my spine. That's when my gut started screaming at me. Something is wrong. I didn't want to make a scene, but I also didn't feel comfortable anymore, so I decided it was time to leave. I headed straight for the checkout line, trying to shake the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. But then I noticed him again, following me to the registers. And just like before, he still had nothing in his hands. He wasn't holding a single item, wasn't in line to buy anything. He was just standing there, looking around, acting like he wasn't staring at me when I could feel his eyes locked on me the entire time. I grabbed my bag and was about to walk out the door, but my instincts told me not to. The last thing I wanted was to have him follow me to my car. So instead, I veered off and walked toward the back of the store, heading for the bathrooms. He didn't follow me at first, which gave me a little bit of relief. But when I stepped out of the restroom a few minutes later, I froze. There he was, standing in the men's section, pretending to look at underwear and socks. Again, not holding anything, just standing there, watching me. At this point, I knew for sure it wasn't just a coincidence. He wasn't just a random shopper minding his own business. He was following me. And he was waiting. I didn't want to panic, but I also wasn't about to take any chances. So instead of trying to shake him again, I walked straight toward an employee and quietly asked if I could speak to the manager. When he came over, I pulled him aside and whispered that a man had been following me around the store the entire time I'd been there, and I was too scared to walk to my car alone. The look on the manager's face immediately changed. He got serious really fast and told me that they'd had issues before with people trying to kidnap women for sex trafficking. Apparently, there had been an incident just a couple months prior at that exact store. He told me I did the right thing by trusting my gut and staying inside. The manager called the police, but the guy must have realized something was up because he bolted before they arrived. I never saw him again. To this day, I don't even like thinking about what could have happened if I had just walked out to my car like normal. If I had ignored that gut feeling. I don't know what his actual intentions were, and honestly, I don't want to know. But what I do know is this. If you ever get that feeling deep in your stomach that something isn't right, listen to it. That day could have ended a lot worse for me.
Oh, believe me, I will listen to my gut too if something was wrong. And that was a smart thinking of your part to go to the manager. Because if you just went out the door, he would have probably followed you to your car and grabbed you and for a sex trafficking, like the manager said, which that is just wrong.
A few months back, I took my pregnant wife and our 2-year-old son to Target for a quick evening run. It was around 8 p.m., and the store was pretty empty, just a handful of other shoppers wandering around. My wife was off browsing while I kept an eye on our son, who was having the time of his life playing in the clothing racks. It was just a typical Target trip, until I noticed something that felt off. 2 men kept showing up in the same aisles as us. At first, I brushed it off as a coincidence, but after a few minutes, I realized they weren't actually shopping. No cart, no basket, not even pretending to look at anything. One had a hood pulled up, the other a baseball cap, and they were definitely watching us. My gut started sending me warning signals, but I kept calm and just made a mental note to stay aware. Then, as if things weren't already starting to feel weird, my son decided to throw a full-blown tantrum, because I wouldn't buy him another Buzz Lightyear toy. Classic toddler meltdown. Since it was getting late anyway, I told my wife to go ahead and check out while I took him to the car. As I made my way to the exit, I glanced back and noticed the guy in the hoodie trailing behind us. At first, I thought maybe he was just heading out too. But once we stepped into the parking lot, I kept checking over my shoulder, and sure enough, he was still following us. I picked up the pace, trying to stay ahead while carrying my son, but I could feel him closing the distance. Instead of heading straight to my car, I decided to double back toward the front of the store, and that's when he popped out right in front of me. Now we were standing about 10 feet apart, just staring at each other. We were alone in the parking lot. It was eerily quiet, and I was holding my kid with no real way to outrun this guy. In the most controlled but firm voice I could manage, I asked him straight up, "Why the hell are you following me?" And then he says, "I just wanted to make sure that kid is yours." I was stunned for a second. Like, what? Did this dude really just say that? He kept repeating, "Is that your kid?" Like he was trying to convince himself of something. And the way he was looking at my son. Every instinct I had was screaming that this guy was trying to take him. I didn't hesitate. I slid my hand under my shirt and gripped the handle of my concealed pistol, making sure he knew I wasn't playing games without actually pulling it out. "This is my son," I told him, "and you need to back the hell off. Now." But he wouldn't drop it. He kept pushing, insisting I might be abducting my own kid, like he was trying to cause a scene, or waiting for an opening. At that moment, I wasn't about to back down. I stared him dead in the eye and said, "Walk away, or I'm calling the cops." That must have been enough, because after a few tense seconds, he suddenly turned and bolted across the parking lot. I watched as he jumped into a car and sped off like he was never there. By the time my wife came out, I was still standing there, heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. I told her everything, and we both agreed. We weren't going on any more late-night Target runs alone. I don't know what that guy's real intentions were. Maybe he was some self-proclaimed vigilante trying to play hero. Maybe he was trying to start something. Or maybe he was waiting for a chance to grab my son. I try not to think about it too much. But one thing's for sure. I'm damn glad I was with my family that night.
No, he won't no self-proclaimed vigilante, that's for sure. He was waiting to find a way to take your son, or maybe possibly kidnap both of you. I don't know. And the fact that when he got called, he had to say that he just wanted to check to make sure that was your son. I'd be like, you saw him with his wife. That was the other thing he could come up with. He was trying to make a scene. But I'm glad the dad was smart enough to act like he's going to pull his gun out and call the cops. That was a good enough signal for him to leave. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Quarter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap and have a nice day.